so what you just saw me make here are the two plates for the narrow coil of the pickup. I stuck the top and the bottom one together with tape, just so they end up like exactly the same shape, and when I drill to make sure the holes line up. So now let's try to get them apart carefully without cutting myself. Just like that. And there we have it. Two identical plates. And they will form one coil of the pickup, like that. Okay, so as pole pieces, we're not using regular magnets, but instead these little steel tubes with threads inside. And will become clear later what we're intending to do here. And the idea is to just hammer those in. So it's a press fit. Now they're all flush at the bottom, but I want them to be a little bit deeper. So I will use just two spacers like that and hammer them a little bit deeper between the spacers. Just like that. By using the spacers I can make sure that they're all precisely the same height. And the last one. As you can see, they all stick out the same amount at the bottom. And now we can try and put the top plate on. So here's the top plate. It should sit like that. Now we have to look really careful that we're aligned. And there you have it, first pickup coil. Next step would be winding wire around it, but before we do that we gotta make another one. Last time you saw me make the two bobbins for the pickup, but before we can get to winding and installing the pickup, there's one more piece we have to make, and that is the base plate where they will mount onto. The base plate is more or less finished here, and just for test I started installing one of the bobbins, just with like screws on the bottom. And the idea is the magnet, this AlNiCo magnet bar, will pretty much slide underneath here, touch the metal parts, and then the other bobbin will sit on here, slide over there, will get screws in the bottom as well, and we have the magnet magnetizing north and south on those two sides. And this is pretty much the pickup. I just calculated for the amount of turns I have right now. I should be around a 3K resistance coil. And to verify my calculations, I will do a quick test measurement. But of course, this super fragile, tiny little wire is coated in an insulation. And I will carefully have to scrape off the insulation in one spot without cutting the wire, obviously. Just so I can measure. And this is... I can't even put the blade on it because it will just cut through. I'm just carefully scraping, just like that. It should be enough to get a measurement. Now I try to get contact here. It's of course a little bit finicky. And we got a reading for a second, but I messed it up. Let's try again. Oh, there we go. Yeah, and this is roughly a 3K ohm coil, just as calculated. Okay, one little drop of CA glue. I'm just doing a little touch up to the insulation I removed here. It's not really necessary, but I want to be safe. Now I lift it up. I don't want to glue to the tape, obviously. up in the air and it can dry like that. Just give it a second, should be good to go. Okay, the second coil is done. Next step will be to solder the connecting leads to it and then probably to wax pot them and then rub them with protective tape. But right now, technically, they would already work as a guitar pickup. They look like both of them together. Before committing to the final assembly of the pickup and the wax potting and everything, I wanted to get a sense for the difference it makes to switch in the second coil. That means the difference between a single coil and a humbucking mode. So I did like a little test assembly here, and it's just floating loosely in this test guitar. Sorry for the little bit crude setup here. But it should be good enough to get some sounds out of it and to get a feeling for how this will actually sound like. I can't really pick up the guitar because the pickup is just loosely floating here. But anyways, so the switch back is both coils. Yeah, you can really hear it gets, the signal level drops a little bit obviously. And it also gets like less mid-rangey, a little bit more trebly, I feel. Let's try again. Oh wow, it's actually not that easy to play the guitar lying on the table. But anyways, the switch backwards here was both coils together, and as you heard, this was like a more powerful mid-rangey sound. And when I switched it forwards, you get this much thinner, treblier sound that kind of reminds you of, I don't know, like a Fender style single coil or something, which is obviously a pretty big difference, but I think it should be a usable switch on guitar to have those very different kind of sounds on a single switch. I think I like that. We can go ahead now and prepare the pickup for final assembly. Yeah, I think I mentioned wax potting a couple of times before. In case you haven't heard of that term, we're actually going to dip the pickup coils in molten liquid wax. And the purpose of that is to, the wax will basically solidify in all the tiny little gaps in between the windings of copper wire. And because I want to use the pickup with high volume and probably even high gain on the amplifier, I want to minimize the risk for feedback, like microphonics in the pickup, that you get this high-pitched squealing sound that's not really musical at all. And the wax will basically solidify the coil and make it a solid unit when it hardens. So yeah, let's melt down some paraffin pellets here. Oops. Should be good enough. Maybe add something later and start by melting down this one. It's already starting to melt. You can see the liquid forming here. This goes pretty quickly. Have to turn down the temperature a little bit and make sure it doesn't get too hot. Maybe let's stick the thermometer in here and watch the temperature. Let's try to rig something up here to hold it. enough. The wax is up to temperature now. Here we have the two pickup coils. I just fastened a little piece of wire to each so I can hang them and suspend them in the liquid. So let's get them in there. I think one after the other makes more sense. We want to down at the bottom. Second one in there as well. And now we're just waiting for all the little air bubbles to escape. And you can see like the wax is solidifying on top of the pretty cold coils, so they have to warm through. And those bubbles there is exactly what we want. This is basically the voids being filled with liquid wax. So I move them around a little bit. The wax is just starting to cool down. We waited long enough for the bubbling to stop, so we're pretty sure that the pickups are fully filled with wax. So yeah, prepare some tissue and take the first one out. The point is I want to clean off as much of the liquid wax right away before it dries on the surface, just so I get like a clean looking pickup. Because in the end, the tops of these pickups will be visible in the guitar. So I want to go ahead and clean them as much as possible. They're actually nice and warm. Let's get the big one out here. Okay. Yeah, the remainings should be cleaned off easily when it's cold with some naphtha or something. I think that's it. We'll let those cool down. And after that we'll measure the resistance and make sure they work as they're supposed to. That's how wax potting works. And there you have it. The pickup is finally assembled, tested, and ready to go into the guitar. Just one last little thing I want to do. I want to add some lacquer to fix these bolts in place so they won't come loose eventually. And of course I could have used like a modern screw fastening product or something, but I want to go with just a drop of lacquer on the head actually, which is a technique you see when you open up old equipment from like the 50s or something. So all I do is just add a drop of lacquer on the bolt and the base plate like this. Do this to all four. And this will be just enough to keep the bolts from moving. Like that.